Poltergeist, Steven Spielberg and Tobe Hooper's horror masterpiece, which was released in 1982. Naturally set in early 80s American suburbia, it focuses on an ordinary family who find themselves in an extraordinary terror. The story is about the Freeling family home getting terrorized by sinister spirits, where Carol Ann, the little girl of the family, is kidnapped by the ghosts and taken to another dimension, where her parents must fight to get her back and cross realms from beyond our understanding. Poltergeist took the classic haunted house movie trope and placed it in modern suburbia, with a very likeable family, which modernized an old-fashioned genre and breathed terrifying new life into it, complete with Star Wars levels of special effects. No longer were haunted house movies confined to creepy old mansions, complete with bats and cobwebs. Now the ghouls from beyond the grave can attack modern families, in modern settings, with modern appliances, namely TV sets. Another great thing about Poltergeist is it also makes us once again terrified of our childhood fears and relive them too. But do we know all there is to know about this remarkable movie? What about the original treatment script that was written up by Steven Spielberg? Was his original vision different to what would become the movie that we all know and love and are terrified of? And there are many fascinating differences between script and movie. For a start, the Poltergeist movie has a fun, playful E.T. vibe about it, whereas the movie often feels like it goes straight into Evil Dead territories. It's more meaner, grittier, and nastier than the final film. So let's get stuck into 10 differences between the script and movie of Poltergeist. Number 10. A change of comic book. At the start of the movie, we see Carol Ann and Robbie Freeling in their bedroom getting ready for bed, where Robbie is reading a Captain America comic. In fact, it was this issue where Captain America goes up against Dr. Octopus. However, originally in the script, it was explained that Robbie is in fact reading a Popeye comic. Now I know what you're probably thinking, so what? It's just a change of comic book. Well, I think this switch demonstrates some of the themes that Steven Spielberg was trying to convey with Poltergeist, themes of modern America being built on the foundations of previous wars, particularly World War II. The script even describes the Cuesta Verde estate as being, quote, the Middle America World War II bought and paid for. And so why the significance of Captain America? Well, if you're a nerd like me, then you'll know that Captain America is a hero born out of World War II. America's new hero, a beacon of hope, the new brave America that was going to triumph from World War II. Very similar to Spielberg's vision of 1980s American suburbia. Also, E-Buzz, the family dog, in the movie is a golden retriever. However, in the original script, E-Buzz is a spaniel. Number 9, Steve and Diane aren't as loving or likeable. One thing that always stood out to me in the Poltergeist movie is just how loving Steve and Diane Freeling are towards each other. No matter how tough things get, their love always shines through, which becomes their biggest strength. However, in the original script, I found their relationship to be more cold, with both characters quick to shut the other down. For example, in the scene where Diane shows Steve the object sliding across the kitchen floor, Steve suggests that the strange phenomena and earthquake that happened the previous night are connected, to which Diane literally replies with, "No shit." You know, lots of jibes at each other like that. Speaking of profanity, the original script had lots more bad language, particularly F-bombs. But hey, we gotta keep this PG, so all those F-bombs that were spread out in the original script were removed. Number 8, Steve wanted to leave the house immediately. One thing that often gets pointed out in Poltergeist, and other haunted house movies for that matter, is why doesn't the family just leave? If the Freelings left sooner, then Carol Ann may not have been kidnapped into another dimension. Well, straight away after viewing the object sliding across the kitchen floor, Steve Freeling was like, hell yeah, let's get out of this spooky home. He wanted to pack up the family there and then and stay at a motel, and send investigators to the house the next day to try and figure out what's going on. but Diane basically shuts him down and says, quote, "Now you're scaring me. Don't try and scare me, Steve." Yeah, once again, it goes back to them being not as close in the original script or working as a team. The irony being is that after Diane says this, the tree tries to eat Robbie and Carol Ann gets kidnapped. Oh, and the script even suggests that the creepy tree outside Robbie's bedroom window bleeds when the branches are broken off. Ugh. Number 7, removed subplot involving Carol Ann being injured. Every Poltergeist fan knows about the awkward jump cut which abruptly cuts off one scene going straight into the other. So what happened in the scene that was cut? Well, there was a subplot removed involving Carol Ann being thrown into a wall. Remember Carol Ann sliding across the floor thanks to the supernatural powers while wearing an American football helmet? Well, yeah, after that, Steve is trying to figure out what's going on, and if Diane was trying to fool him with some kind of trick involving magnets. Because, once again, this version of Steve and Diane are more against each other than loving. Where Steve then says he doesn't want Pizza Hut for dinner as he hates Pizza Hut. A line that popular belief suggests was the cause for the jump cut, as not to upset Pizza Hut. Where Carol Ann sits back on the circle on the floor, where she slides again, only this time it was more aggressive and rough, with Carol Ann sliding into the adjacent wall, with her helmet that she was wearing even putting a hole in the wall, which actually saved her from getting seriously injured. This was the first part of the movie to suggest that the spirits in the house may actually be less playful and more sinister. And later, when Steve and Diane are discussing the disturbances in their bedroom, Steve mentions that had she not worn the helmet, that they would be in an emergency room with Carol Ann that evening instead, where Diane pretty much tells him to be quiet. Number 6, more focused is put on the stain in the wall. So in the earlier part of the movie, a ghost hand comes out of the TV towards Carol Ann, where it then goes into the wall. In the original script, that part of the wall was left with a stain, which throughout the story seems to grow. It starts off looking like a Rorschach ink blot, but as it grows, it starts to resemble veins, and there are several times where Diane tries to clean it off or cover it up with a picture. And after Tangina supposedly cleans the house, the creepy stain is gone. However, when Diane gets attacked in her bedroom, the stain growth is back on the wall, where it materializes into a big beast monster, which the script describes as the hairy body of a mutant tarantula. The spider vein scene was filmed, but not used for the movie as it was felt that it didn't look right. Oh, and the scene where Diane gets attacked on the bed was way nastier in the script, with a lot more nudity. Number 5, building the pool was part of a marketing strategy. This isn't really a vital part of the script, but I think it's interesting as it shows Spielberg's original vision of the Freeling family. At the start of the movie, the Freelings are building a swimming pool, which I always assumed they were doing for their kids. However, in the scene where Steve and Diane are smoking the wacky tobacco in their bedroom, Steve wasn't reading a book about Ronald Reagan as seen in the film, but brochures about swimming pools and diving boards. And Steven explains that it was part of a marketing plot by his company, in that if the Freeling family builds a swimming pool, then the rest of the neighborhood will follow and will also be building swimming pools. Steve follows up by saying, quote, "These hills will be alive with the smell of chlorine," which suggests that the Freeling family don't necessarily provide their luxuries for love and comfort, but for more economical reasons. Number 4, the 3 investigators. Okay, this is where things get really interesting. In the movie, after Carol Ann is kidnapped, Steve gets help from 3 paranormal investigators at a university, those being Dr. Lesh, Ryan, and Marty. In the script, we learn that Dr. Lesh's first name is Martha, which is cool as it means that Batman and Superman won't be fighting anyone, along with Ryan and Tack. Yep, Tack. Ryan and Tack are simply explained to being long-haired students. Upon arriving at the house, Dr. Lesh at first suggests that maybe Carol Ann has teleported, and there was even a Star Trek reference. In the movie, when Ryan was at the monitors at night, we see him drawing a spooky picture. In the script, Ryan wasn't drawing but reading Penthouse magazine, which he was really getting into. In fact, he was so into it, he didn't even notice the paranormal activity at first. In the movie, Marty goes into the kitchen to get food, where the ghosts really mess with his head. Well, this happens to Tack in the script. However, after the kitchen attack, Tack doesn't peel his face off at the sink, but instead sees his reflection as a rotting corpse in a burial suit, which was kind of a precursor to the corpses coming out of the ground in the movie's climax. Interestingly, the alternative scene of Tack, or in this case Marty, seeing himself as a rotten corpse as opposed to peeling his face off, was filmed and used in early TV broadcasts of Poltergeist. There was also a deleted character called Anthony Farrow, who is in charge of the parapsychology department at the university, and has something of a flirty relationship with Dr. Lesh. She shows him the ghostly footage at the Freelings' house, along with the jewelry that came out of thin air in the Freelings' living room. And there is a really creepy moment where Farrow discovers that one of the items that materialized from the Freelings' living room ceiling was a muzzle device that morticians used to use in order to keep a corpse's mouth closed. He suggests to use Tangina, and Dr. Lesh doesn't like Tangina, labeling her as melodramatic. Once again, this scene, or at least part of this scene, was filmed but was eventually scrapped. Number 3. Tangina is very childlike. When Tangina arrives in the original script, the scene feels strange and no one can quite figure Tangina out. Yeah, she's psychic, but she's also very immature and even a little inappropriate. She giggles like a little kid, and when she sees her head on a TV monitor, she said she's never been on TV before, while making jokes about shooting JR, particularly shooting his quote, pecker off. No joke, it's in the script. Everyone else looks at Tangina like she's crazy. Even Lesh tells her to get on with things and seems to be frustrated with her. Yeah, it seems that originally Dr. Lesh and Tangina really don't get along and have something of a rivalry. Throughout the scene where Diane crosses the other dimension through the children's closet, Tangina seems to wheeze a lot and be congested with phlegm, suggesting that she probably isn't very healthy. And her famous speech where she explains the existence of the spirits in the house and explains the beast actually isn't in the original script, which explains why Carol Ann can hear Steve Freeling. See, in the original script, Carol Ann can hear Steve Freeling, where he tells her to answer her parents just before Diane crosses over to get her. However, in the speech that Tangina gives the Freelings, which was added later, Tangina explains that Carol Ann can only hear her mother's voice, which has also made fans question how she was able to hear Steve in the next scene. Not so much a plot hole, but more the script changed, and the part where Steve talks to Carol Ann was left over from the original script before it was explained that Carol Ann can only hear her mother's voice. Number 2, deleted dinner scene. After the ordeal where Steve and Diane Freeling get Carol Ann back, we cut to several weeks later, where we see the Freelings having dinner in their home at the dinner table, where it's explained that the family is almost normal again, and that they have been going to family counselling, where the family gets a postcard from Tangina, who was on holiday with a much younger boyfriend, described as being in his 30s. In the scene, Carol Ann even refers to Tangina as Auntie Tangy, and Robbie is going on about how awesome the food on his plate is. Yeah, this dinner scene didn't really do much for me. I found it corny and cheesy. And in the movie, the scene was replaced with the Freelings loading their belongings onto a truck, which I think actually worked better. Number 1, the Beast is an old man. In the original script, the first glimpse we get of the Beast is in the recorded footage of all the ghosts walking down the staircase in the Freelings' living room, where the Beast is described as being a creepy old man with scary eyes. In an alternative special effects test, where the Beast's giant head materializes in the closet, we can see it was originally going to be an old man. And of course in the sequel, we actually see that yes indeed, the Beast is a scary old guy. The Beast in the script is also much more powerful, with his power being kind of limitless. In the end scene where Diane and the kids are trying to get out the house, the kitchen is totally destroyed by the Beast's sheer anger. In fact, the script explains that the house is sucked inside out by the anger and lust of the Beast. Also, it was very difficult for the Freelings to escape in the family car, as bodies kept repeatedly bursting from the ground, blocking their exit. At one stage, a hideously deformed carcass lands on the bonnet of the car and just stares at Steve, suggesting that it might be the Beast. I mean, the film had plenty of corpses coming out of the ground, sure, but in the original script, there were just rotting dead corpses all over the place, with it being described that there is rotten dead flesh everywhere, where the ground literally rips open with bodies flying out all over the place. Even the Teague character falls down a hole and gets covered in pieces of dead bodily remains. In the script, the movie ends with the family going to a hotel, with their room number being 237, an obvious wink and nudge to The Shining. And film analyst Rob Ager pointed out that the last shot of the movie we see room 217, the original haunted room from Stephen King's Shining book. In the original script, Steve doesn't push the TV out of the room, but oddly, the movie ends with Carol Ann getting out of her hotel bed while the rest of the family is asleep and turns on the TV in the room to view the static, which doesn't really make sense, especially after the terrifying ordeal she has just experienced. This just makes Carol Ann look stupid, as at that stage she would have known that the TV people are dangerous. No, the ending in the film is definitely much better and makes more sense. Remember, it's better to make the family look smarter than stupid. The film version of Poltergeist is a lot warmer and kinder, and you can feel the love of the family and how their love is their strength. I think that makes the characters more empathetic and easy to relate to. Unlike the original script, which I felt like the family was a lot more cold to each other. It's making these characters more warmer and more loving, which makes us care about them more. So for that, I think the movie version is definitely better. However, the script version is vastly more straight up horror. So if you're a hardcore horror fan, you would find the script fascinating. Epilogue Part 1, the magazine article. Just to further expand on Poltergeist origins and what could have been, a couple of months ago I got this magazine called The Dark Side, which has this awesome Hammer Horror illustrated cover. And inside the magazine is an article celebrating the 40th anniversary of Poltergeist, and an article by James Rose, which gives more of an insight into the genesis of Poltergeist. Interestingly, according to this article, Poltergeist kind of came to be because of Jaws 2. Yeah, sounds weird, right? But let me explain. You see, Steven Spielberg's alien contact masterpiece, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, came out in 1977 and was a massive success, and the studio were hounding him to get to work on a sequel. But Spielberg didn't want to make a sequel. But he then reflected on Jaws 2, and learned that likewise with Jaws, if he didn't make a sequel, then someone else will. Once again, as was the case with Jaws 2, which apparently he clearly didn't like. And he didn't want someone else getting involved, as Close Encounters was his baby. So he came up with a sequel that was more of a horror movie called Watch the Skies, where aliens land on a farm and do sinister experiments on the animal stock, where they then turn their attention to the human family who live on the farm. All up, there were 5 aliens. However, one of them was actually a friendly alien called Buddy, who befriends the family's autistic son. However, while making Raiders of the Lost Ark, Spielberg decided to split this script into 2 stories. The aspect of the friendly alien befriending a young boy became E.T., and the aspect of a family being terrorized by supernatural forces beyond our understanding became Poltergeist. So, in many ways, Poltergeist and E.T. are twins, and I guess you could say that Poltergeist is E.T.'s evil twin. Epilogue Part 2, The Search for a Horror Collaborator. Now, according to this article, Spielberg had wanted to do a collaboration with Texas Chainsaw Massacre director Tobe Hooper for quite a while, and it was Hooper who suggested that he and Spielberg make a movie about ghosts, which prompted Spielberg to change the weird supernatural forces from aliens who are terrorizing this family to ghosts. And so this horror ghost story about a modern American family who gets the bejesus scared out of them wasn't quite Poltergeist yet, as at this stage it was called It's Nighttime, which fascinates me as I've never heard this title before outside of this article. In addition to that, Poltergeist was probably more of a reflection of the as-aforementioned Jaws than it was Close Encounters, with Spielberg himself referring to Poltergeist as Land Jaws. Spielberg had written an early treatment, which we just explored in the first half of this video, but he wanted an experienced horror writer to actually pen the script, where he sought after the services of Stephen King. But King wasn't able to help as he had just flown to the UK and was unavailable. So Spielberg hired the services of writer Michael Grace and Mark Victor, who were interesting choices as they had both just previously written the Western action flick Death Hunt, which was kind of considered to be meh and didn't perform too good in the box office. And before that, Grace mainly wrote for television, including Starsky and Hutch and Kojak. According to the article, it was Grace and Victor who suggested that a family member should be put into danger by the ghostly forces, and decided to make the youngest character, Carol Ann, the character who was really put into harm's way by these supernatural forces. Supposedly, in an early script, Carol Ann died and came back to haunt the family, until it was decided to have her be kidnapped into the spirit realm, another dimension with her closet acting as a portal. Something that was very similar to the Richard Matheson penned Twilight Zone episode, The Little Girl Lost, which actually led to a lawsuit. By making the youngest child the focus of the ghostly activity, Grace and Victor decided that the horror of the movie should explore childhood fears, like the dark, lightning, scary trees, creepy dolls, etc. And so, Poltergeist became Poltergeist. Epilogue Part 3, Other Deleted Scenes. Something else that's really interesting that James Rose explores in his article goes back to the tentacle on the wall scene. Unlike other claims that the scene was cut out because it just didn't look right, the article claims that the tentacle had to be cut in order to avoid an R rating, because the tentacles were originally pulsating and seemingly assaulting Diane Freeling. It was felt that the sexual undertones were just way too much and way too horrific. Hence the scene was reshot without any fleshy, grabby, pulsating tentacles. Recently, this photo has surfaced which shows a deleted scene of Marty levitating. Considering that he's holding his side, I'm guessing this is the scene where he checks out the children's bedroom and gets bitten by an evil force. And going by the pic, we can see blood dripping down his pants, suggesting that the scene was going to be quite gruesome. That's probably why the scene was cut. Keep in mind that when we see him run down the stairs in the next scene, there is no blood on his pants. And this picture of something really weird happening to Marty's bottom lip. It's hard to tell what's happening here or where in the movie this happens, as the picture is in black and white. So yeah, it's hard to tell exactly what's going on here. Man, poor Marty got the most messed up out of everyone in this movie. Another deleted scene was featured in the novelization, which was written by James Caan, who also wrote the novelizations for Return of the Jedi, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and The Goonies. Although the book was supposedly written after the movie's release, so it could have been an added scene, as opposed to a deleted one. But then again, novelizations do tend to follow original alternative scripts, so who knows. The scene takes place early in the book, where Robbie Freeling is having a birthday party, where his mother Diane has put together a treasure hunt for him to find his presents. When while expecting the grill in the backyard, his sinister clown doll is hiding in the grill, and when Robbie puts his hand inside it, it bites him. Where after getting bitten, Robbie sees his clown sitting there, and is struck by how the doll's grin looks slightly sinister than usual. And naturally, Robbie is also confused as to how the clown moved from the rocking chair in his bedroom. Now, all these alternative scripts and plot points aside, although it is interesting looking into what could have been, Poltergeist is still a remarkable film the way that it is, and it's just as terrifying now as it was 40 odd years ago. So I'm glad that we got the version that we ended up with. When Poltergeist first came into the popular zeitgeist, one thing was for certain.
They're here.
Anyway, I'm Minty and I'm off to read my Popeye, sorry, I meant Captain America comic book. See ya!